All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off, and our goal this time is to create our journal entry square. So we're going to create a folder. We're going to call it components. And this is more of an architectural thought process. We're going to nest a folder in there, call it journal entry square. And inside that, we're going to create our JS file. Spell it properly. And then we're going to create our SCSS file. All right. I need to engage the Sass, so let's let that do its thing. I also need to redo the npm run start so we can see live changes as it happens. All right. So while we're waiting for the Sass to pop its thing up, we're going to go ahead and const journal entry square. That's going to be an arrow function, and we'll export default journal entry square. And we can see here Sass finished and our CSS file got created. I love it. So we need to import a couple things. We'll touch on them as we get going. So we're first going to return. We'll set it up as a div. We're going to have an h2 tag. We're also going to have an h3 tag. We're also going to have another div. Inside that, we're going to have an unordered list. And after the div tag, oops, let me scooch that one up there. If you want to know how I did that, if you're on a Windows machine, Alt and then up arrow. If you're on a Mac, I believe it's Option and up arrow. All right, and we'll add a paragraph tag here. Boom, all right. So we're just gonna have title. Next, we're gonna have created. This is gonna be our date, right? So we're gonna say created date. Inside this div is going to be tags, and that is where our tags will live. So tag 1, tag 2, stuff like that. And then our P is essentially going to be the body that gets truncated with an ellipses. So we'll go into our SCSS. Actually, let's create some class names here. In our parent div, we're going to have a class name of journal-entry. In our h2, we're going to have journal entry underscore title. All right, and we're actually just going to copy that full thing. We'll bring it down. This one is going to be underscore date. In our unordered list, this is going to be underscore tags. And in our paragraph tag, it's going to be underscore body. Now, the reason behind our naming convention is because when we get into our SCSS, it's just going to be like a lot more organized. So let's first import, or we'll use our colors, and then we're going to do journal-entry, curly brackets. So we have journal entry, right? And with SCSS, it allows us to use kind of just shorthand to nest everything, all the other related tags that have similar beginnings, right? So journal entry title, journal entry date, right? All that. Using shorthand, we can save ourselves some time and some headache by just doing and underscore title. And now with VS Code, if you hover over it, we can see journal entry title is what this shorthand targets. Now, I personally love that. So let's do some basic setup here. We're going to do and underscore tags and underscore body. And we'll do the last one. Actually, we'll do it sequentially. And underscore date. All right, so in our initial, in our container, if you will, we're gonna have a padding of 15 pixels. Our color is gonna be the same as everybody else, so colors dot font color. We're gonna have background color the same as everybody else, background color. Actually, this one's gonna be a bit different. We're gonna actually use our nav bar background. We're gonna do display grid, GTC shorthand for grid template columns, and we're gonna do a min-max of 100 pixels, comma 300 pixels. And then we're gonna have a GTR, shorthand for grid template rows. And these are gonna be 50 pixels, 24 pixels, 100 pixels, and min content. Right, so our title, our created by, our tags, and then our body. We're also gonna just add like a gap of 15 pixels, so there's some nice space. Oops. Here we go. All right, so we'll save that. Just so we can get this like showing, let's go over to our home.js. We're going to go ahead and import our journal entry square just by doing this. We're gonna go here and we're gonna type it in there and hit enter, and VS Code does the heavy lifting for us. I love it. So we can see now, there's something. We gotta add some other stuff to it. So let's take care of that real quick. Oh, but we also need to now add a div here to be the container for our list. And that's going to be home underscore journal dash list for our class name. So home underscore journal dash list. Spelled properly. Now let's pop over to our journal entry square real quick. We need to go ahead and import our CSS file. So we're going to do import and journal entry square.css, save that, and now we can see the tile populate here. Back in our home.js, we're going to go to the SCSS. And in our journal container, we're going to modify this a second. So we're actually going to do an and container. Let's get that organized here. Actually, we're going to cut this and then we're going to paste it, because now container is going to be a shorthand for home underscore journal, right? And then dash container. So after that, we're going to do and dash list. Hover over it, we can see home underscore journal list, right? Isn't that just great? So we're going to display grid. We're going to justify content center. We're going to do GTC, and we're going to repeat auto fit. We're gonna have min-max of 250 pixels and 350 pixels. And we're essentially just gonna shift alt down, and rather than grid template columns, we're gonna now have it grid template rows to have it do the exact same thing. We're gonna have a gap of 20 pixels for this one. So now we can see, right, look, that just shortened everything up. It's now a square, thus the name. And then if we wanted to see what more would look like, right, we just add a bunch more there. And now they are obviously breaking out in a tile format. And so if we expand this full screen, it spans the width of 4 tiles, and it shrinks as we get smaller, right? So 3, 2, ultimately 1 for mobile, right? So doing this format allows us to target all devices. Full screen is more desktop, right? Laptop, tablet, cell phone. So that's all super fun. Now let's actually create the page, where we can create our journal entry. So to do that, we're going to collapse components, collapse home, create the folder structure, create, and inside we're gonna have create.js. That was EJS. Let's try that again. I'll show you something actually new. I'm gonna expand this here. So via command line, we can do source, cd into the source folder, and then now we can cd into create. And we're gonna touch create.js, create.scss. Hit enter, boom. Sometimes it's just easier doing that. So before we actually start making that content, we need to go over to our app.js and provide a route for it. So our path is going to be create, and that is going to be create. Now let's go here. We'll just do a quick const create export default. We'll just have a div. Actually, we're going to need to return that. So div, and inside that div, we're going to say create. Yay! So now we just need to quick import it. So we're just going to really do that again. Boom. Ah, so easy. So we're gonna hit save and go over here now, and we can see create is right there. So for everybody watching, right, this is the process I go through when I create my own projects. I start small and I build it out. Right, so this project alone was just a lot of trial and error. How do I use the proper technology to create these? How do I create inputs? What inputs do I want? When I have a search function, what kind of search functionality do I want? So a lot of thought goes into this, and ultimately we're going to have a full stack project. We're going to be able to submit all these input fields that we're going to create, and then that will hook to the server, and the server is going to put that in MongoDB. We're going to be able to view our journal entries and actually search through them as well. So all of this is coming along. You just got to stick with me to make sure we can make it, and you can see my thought process along the way. So now that we're here in our create, we're going to use a section tag. And I believe I used that in the home as well. I did, yeah. So again, I'm a big proponent of semantic HTML. A lot of people just throw a div there or a span there. I prefer the section tag. I prefer people be good at semantic HTML. Now we're going to do a form. Inside that form, we're going to have div. In that div, we're going to have a label, and we're also going to have an input. We're going to create another div, have another label and input. Actually, I tell you what, because I like working smarter and not harder, let's Shift Alt down. Boom. Now outside of there, we're going to have a label. We're going to have a text area. And then we're going to have a button. And we'll hit save. Cool. Pretty bleak so far, but we're getting there. Now, when I was first building this for my own personal project, I didn't necessarily have all this stuff here. I built one thing and I said, oh, okay, what else do I need? I built another thing. Okay, cool. Then I cleaned it up. Oh, let me make a label for the input rather than having this just be a paragraph tag, or let me add something else and then, oh, here's this, right? So sometimes you just build something just to get it there and let your brain then think further from there. There's a saying, you can't create and analyze at the same time. So it's like if you're making a to-do list, right? Just write everything that you can think of that you need to do. And then if you need to organize it after that, then you can organize it from most important to least important. Same here. Just get what's in your head out, and then we can add to it. So our first label is going to be our title. And then we're going to have an input of, we'll call it just a name equals title. And our label is going to have HTML4. Okay, and so this is a way that connects this label to this input, right? So semantically, they now go together. Down here, we're going to have tags, and we're going to do the same thing. Copy this. For this input, we'll call it tags. Copy here for this label, and we'll call it tags. All right, and then down here in this label, we're going to have make a new entry. And we're going to call that label HTML4. It's going to be journal entry. And our text area is going to have a name of journal entry. You guessed it, yeah. And then our button is going to be create, and it's going to be of type submit. Now that is important for a couple reasons, and I'll talk about that in a sec. All right, last thing we're going to do is we're going to create an onSubmit handler where it's going to be E, and we're going to call it handle submit. That's going to take an E. Now we'll create that here in just a sec, but let me talk about the importance of this button here. Now I've worked at companies where they'll have this be an anchor tag, or they'll have it be a div with an on-click event. This all goes back to semantic HTML. So let's save this real quick. I know it's not defined. All right, well, I guess we're just gonna create it real quick. Const handle submit. And we'll just be like alert submitted. Okay, there we go. So this button element is important for a couple reasons. A, when you're tabbing through, it naturally fits into the semantic HTML tab path, right? So I go from this label or this input field to that input field, text area, button, right? When you use other HTML elements besides the semantic ones, then you have to start doing things like let's, for example, if we were just going to use this as a div that had an on-click, right? we would then need to add a tab index of something, just to make sure, and we'll also have to create a role of button, right? Just to even kind of have the thing to start to work, right? Why do companies do that? I don't really know. And sometimes it's not even the companies, it's the individual developers. So we can already see here that this, even though it tabs to it, we had to do so much more work just to get it to tab there. And even still, we're gonna have to do some CSS to style it as a button, to add an on-click handler, to create a hover where your mouse turns into a cursor. It's just use the proper HTML elements that ship with HTML5, and it'll make your life so much easier. So we switch it back to there. Look, it already lines up with all the other elements. And again, we can tab to it. Now here's the other cool part, is we can both click it to have the alert say submitted, or we'll tab to it and hit enter, the same exact result. So doing something with like a div tag and all that jazz, and we can actually even get rid of the role of button, because HTML button element has that built into its essentially fibers, right? So just a little soapbox thing, but now we have our create page structured. Let's style it real quick. So let's go ahead and start giving some class names here. So that was class name create. This will be a class name of create form or create fields. Underscore fields. This div is going to have just a class name of tags. I don't need to do anything crazy for that. Input is going to have a class name of text background. This div will have class name of tags. We're going to copy this, throw it into the same input field. All right, this label is going to have a class name. It's going to be a journal entry underscore label. That's going to be camel case. Class name for the text area is just going to be journal entry, but also text dash background. And the button's going to have a class name of button. All right. We'll go into our create.scss now. And we're going to use our colors. We're going to import our buttons. I'm sorry, our page body. We're actually needing to create a couple other importable SCSS files here. Pagebody.scss. Awesome. All right, so we're going to save that. We're going to go to our terminal. We're going to cd just up one, and we're going to touch underscore buttons.scss. Okay. And now you'll notice, even though we have our Sass running, right? Anything with the preface of underscore will not be included in turning it into a CSS file. These essentially, again, are just so we can import dry code, right? Don't repeat yourself code. So in here, we're going to have a class of button. We're going to call it color. That's going to be colors. That's going to be our font color. Background color is going to be our background color. Colors dot background color. And then we're going to have a cursor of pointer, a margin of 0px, 5px. Padding of just 5 pixels all around. A border radius of 5 pixels. You can do brad, and it just pops it up right there. And then we're going to have a box shadow, and this one's going to be a little bit interesting. So I ultimately ended up on this box shadow. You know, kind of, again, the internet's a beautiful tool. So you can do box shadow generator, right? And then pick one. A lot of them like this will allow you to just like, oh, wee, do some crazy things, get it to really where you want it to. Sometimes I will use the console, I'll inspect it, go to whichever element I need to do and mess around in the styles area. But this is ultimately what I put for the box shadow. So here we go. Box shadow, inset, -2 pixels, -3 pixels, 10 pixels, 0 pixels, and then RGB, it's going to be 139, 139, 139, and then /30%. And then now back in our create CSS, we're going to import buttons. Yay. So now we can actually go down and do our create initial style. We're going to include our page body, right? And again, our page body is so we can write dry code to have the same template on most of the pages we use. And if we just even hit save from there, we need to import the CSS file, create.css, right? So obviously it's not fully styled yet, but we can see just by adding the page body, it automatically did a bunch of styling for us. Oh, it's incredible. All right, so let's style the first one. We'll do fields. Okay, we're gonna have the grid area of body, display grid, grid template rows, GTR, and we're gonna have 0.05 FR, 0.05 FR, 0.05 FR, and then 0.95 FR. Okay, and that is because we don't want, we really just want this text area to be the main bulk of the body, right? So we're giving that the majority of everything. And if we look here in our create, so it's going to be our create, I'm sorry, our fields, right? Which is here. So this will be the first 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and then our 0.95. Do we need to add one for the button? Don't necessarily need to. So let's do a margin bottom of 30 pixels. Boom. All right. While we're in here, because again, I talked about mobile friendly, we're going to create a media event, a media query, and max width, 800 pixels. And then we're just going to have a different margin. So it'll be 10 pixels and 20 pixels. now we're gonna enter there. We're gonna do and tags. So this is essentially a nested element. So when you don't have a direct thing coming after the ampersand, you can nest the class name. So we see here, it's saying, okay, this is the parent element, and then any elements underneath it with a class of tags will get whatever is going to be put in here. So we'll now do display grid, GTR, and we can do repeat 2, and then 1FR. And we'll have a margin of 10 pixels, 0, 20 pixels, 0. And under there, we're going to have input. And now this is, again, just to show you something different. Our input, we can just do this, right? So we can nest class names, but then we can also nest elements that we want to target. We can see the order it's going to do things in. Now we actually gave our input a class name of text background. We're going to leave it like that. This is just to show you the differences of things you can do with SCSS. We'll give it 30 pixels. All right, so now we're going to go here outside the tags, and we're going to do and label. Our color is going to be our regular colors import, but this time we're going to do our blue font dark. Font size of 16 pixels. And our font weight of bold. All right, so then under that, we're going to do our and journal entry. We're gonna have a height of 600 pixels, right? Because again, we want to give this the bulk of everything. Our font size is going to be 20 pixels, padding of 15 pixels all around. We'll give it a margin bottom of 20 pixels, and we'll give it a letter spacing of 1 pixel. And I'm not really going to talk too much about that. That was just trial and error of stuff that I found. Eventually, we're going to import a font family. We're not going to do that right now, though. And our last one of label is going to have a margin bottom of 20 pixels. Hit save. Look at that. Isn't that something lovely? So now we can see our text background isn't coming into play. We need to create a text field background SCSS. And that one will just go here to the source, new file, text field background.scss. Don't hit enter because we need to do the underscore before it. Dot text dash background. We're going to do color, colors.font color, and background color, colors.nav background color. There we go. So we'll go back to our create.scss and we'll go ahead and import that. Bada boom, now we can save, and we can see these are now a dark background with text in there, right? And our create button will still do the alert, and we've now created the create page. So we'll move on with the functionality in the next lesson, but I hope this is getting you excited because I worked pretty hard on this myself, but you can see all the really amazing things you can do with SCSS. Like, first off, as a front-end developer, you should be really stoked about that. And then being able to do things semantically, both on the create page and the home page, that allows you to bring so much value to your position as a developer already. when companies hear you know how to do semantic HTML, they know that you're paying attention to accessibility and other things versus just throwing divs everywhere and trying to work with HTML elements that aren't naturally ordered. So next time, we're going to move forward and create the server so we can start creating things and storing them in the MongoDB database.